Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're digging into something really key for, well, any educational program,
Mm.
student engagement.
Mm-hmm.
But we're not just talking about, whether students show up. It's much more about the institution's role, how they create an environment where students actually want to be involved.
Exactly. It's definitely a two-way street. You can't just look at what students do. You have to look at the structures, the opportunities the institution provides. And when that clicks, it really boosts the quality.
Yeah, absolutely. So to get a real handle on this, we looked at institutions that have been recognized by the Aspire to Excellence initiative.
Ah, yes, Aspire. They do great work spotlighting excellence in medical, dental, veterinary education globally.
And student engagement is one of the big things they look for.
Yep.
So studying these recognized schools gives us some, concrete examples.
Definitely. If Aspire has recognized them, it means they've shown real demonstrable success in building these kinds of productive relationships with their students.
So we'll be focusing on 3 medical schools today. All Aspire winners in this area, but quite different.
That's right. We've got a newer graduate entry school from the UK, then a university hospital partnership in South Central Asia, quite established, and also a large medical school in the Middle East.
And we're going to look at how they tackle student engagement across 4 sort of key areas, 4 domains that really cover the student experience.
Yeah, these 4 domains give us a really good framework. So first up is how students get involved in the actual policy and decision making of the school.
Okay, domain 1, policy and decision making. So this is about students having a genuine voice in how the school runs. Things like governance, curriculum planning, even faculty stuff.
Exactly that. How much real say do they have? And the examples are interesting. Let's take School 1, the UK one. It's newer graduate entry. They've got a really formal setup.
Formal how?
Well, students have actual codified voting rights on several committees. It's written down. It's official.
Voting rights, that's significant. More than just being allowed in the room.
Much more. And they also have a student staff liaison committee.
Okay, and what does that liaison committee achieve, practically speaking?
It's a regular channel, for students to bring up issues, give feedback, and for the school to talk back directly. But the voting rights extend further. Students sit on the main medical education committee.
The big one that oversees everything.
Yeah. And also on the committees for specific phases of the curriculum, so they're influencing content and delivery directly. And get this, they even sit on interview panels when they're appointing new teaching-only faculty.
Students helping choose their teachers. What's the thinking there? What effect does that have?
Well, it signals huge trust in the student's perspective, right? And likely helps make sure the faculty hired really connect with student needs. Plus, the student committee has ways to gather input from all students, so their representatives aren't just speaking for themselves.
Right, representing the wider student body.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, what about School 2, the one in South Central Asia, the University Hospital Partnership?
They have a very active medical student council, really central.
Active how? I think our note said something like 75% of students get involved through it.
Yeah, huge engagement. And it's likely because the council has real influence. Students get representation on loads of educational governing committees.
Okay.
And also, interestingly, on the faculty's well-being committee.
Faculty well-being. That's an interesting one for students to be on.
It is, suggests a holistic view. They're also on the programmatic assessment committee. They contribute to developing new policies. And this is key. Student feedback on teaching actually factors into faculty promotions.
Okay. So if you're a student giving feedback, it might actually have an impact on that faculty member's career. That's a motivator.
Definitely. It adds weight. Now, School 3, the Middle Eastern one, how do they handle student input in decisions?
Yeah, what's their approach?
They have formal student reps on some committees, maybe not quite as widespread as School 2, but they consistently invite students to curriculum committees and actively ask for responses on big things like policy drafts or the institutional strategic plan.
So input is actively sought, even if maybe formal voting power is less common across the board.
Seems that way. And student evaluations of teaching are still really important there, too.
Right, I remember that, even if regulations stop students being on hiring panels directly.
Exactly. Those evaluations still feed into promotion and retention decisions, so they have impact.
So looking across the 3, what's the common theme here? Different mechanisms, but...
It's the intentionality, I think. They've all deliberately created formal channels, committees, councils, liaison groups specifically to get student input into decisions. It's not left to chance, it's structured, often written into policy.
And having strong student bodies like these councils seems crucial to make it work.
Absolutely. But maybe the most critical piece, showing that the input does something. It can't just be a talking shop. There needs to be evidence that student feedback leads to actual changes, adopted policies, whatever it might be. That's what makes the engagement feel real and worthwhile.
That makes total sense.
Yeah.
Real impact validates the whole process.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's influencing the big decisions. Let's move to domain 2. Engagement in education and program evaluation. This feels much more about the day-to-day learning experience.
It really is. This covers, students evaluating courses and teachers, sure, but also whether that feedback is actually used to improve the curriculum. And it includes how students take responsibility for their own learning and even help their peers learn.
Right, so it's not just education being done to students, but students as active partners in shaping it and participating in it. How does the UK school handle this?
Well, there's a clear expectation students provide feedback on courses, clerkships, and that feedback genuinely gets considered by the curriculum committees where, remember, students are members. But they also have that mystery shopper program, which I thought was really interesting.
Mystery shopper. Okay, tell me more. How does that work in an educational setting?
It seems like a way to get really detailed qualitative feedback on individual teaching sessions, goes way beyond just ticking boxes on a form. It gives faculty very specific feedback on how they taught, what worked, what didn't from a student's perspective in that moment, allows for real fine-tuning.
Oh, actionable feedback. I like that.
Yeah. And they also use a lot of case-based small group learning. That naturally pushes students to be active, right, to take ownership. Plus, they have formal peer teaching and mentoring schemes with training provided.
Training is important there, so it's not just feedback up, but also support across, peer-to-peer. Okay, School 2 in South Central Asia, evaluation and education.
They get incredibly high response rates on their evaluations, over 80%.
Wow. That suggests students feel it's worth their time.
Exactly. They must feel heard. They also do mid-course surveys, and then crucially, students discuss the results directly with faculty.
Mid-course. So adjustments can potentially be made right away.
Potentially, yes, or at least issues are flagged early. It shows responsiveness. And again, the feedback goes to course directors, department chairs, a specific faculty evaluation committee. It's circulated.
Seems like a very transparent loop. And they were big on active learning too, weren't they?
Huge. Over half their teaching uses active methods like PBL, team-based learning. That demands engagement. And remember their student council. Its subcommittees actively provide academic help, mental health support, peer mentoring, all linked back to helping students succeed in the program.
So the students themselves are building a support network within the formal structure. That's powerful engagement.
Yeah.
And School 3, the Middle Eastern one.
Also mandatory anonymous course evaluations, high response rates again, results shared widely students, faculty, department heads, accountability. They also use a lot of active learning. PBL is common. And they offer leadership training specifically for students who want to be peer tutors or mentors. So again, enabling that peer support role.
Okay, so across the board here, it's this give and take. Institutions ask for feedback, students give it. But the key seems to be using the feedback to make changes. That encourages more feedback later.
Exactly. It builds trust and shows the value.
And the focus on active learning methods and facilitating peer support, those seem like common threads too for boosting engagement in the learning itself.
Precisely. They're fostering a culture where students aren't just passive receivers, they're active shapers of their own education. Right, shall we move to the third domain?
Let's do it. Domain 3, student engagement in the academic community. So this is beyond the required curriculum, more about research, broader academic life.
Yeah, exactly. How do students connect with the wider world of scholarship? Research involvement, conferences, that kind of thing. Let's start with the UK school again. Research is quite central for them, isn't it?
It seems so. It's actually a requirement for all students, but they offer flexibility. You can do your own project or join a school one, and crucially, they offer support, mentoring, but also funding.
That funding piece is so important, isn't it? It makes things possible. Funding for summer research, funding to go to conferences, present your work.
Yeah, and their follow-up survey found about a quarter of students have presented at regional meetings. That's not just doing research, it's sharing it, engaging with the community.
That's a great outcome. Taking that step to present publicly really shows a deeper level of academic engagement. What about School 2, South Central Asia? How do they approach research?
They've taken a really integrated approach, it seems.
How so?
Research isn't an add-on. It's a required subject woven through all 6 years of the curriculum.
All 6 years, wow.
Yeah, building up year on year, and it finishes with a mentored research project for everyone, so all graduates get that experience.
That really embeds it in their training. Do they offer extra opportunities too?
They do. There's a school-funded extracurricular research program if you want to go deeper, and an active student research club. Plus, they mentioned students presenting nationally and getting involved in groups like the Asian Medical Students Association. So, engaging beyond the institution, too.
Okay, so multiple pathways, again, required integration plus voluntary extras. And the Middle Eastern school, School 3.
Similar themes. They reported a good chunk of students, maybe 20–30%, get involved in research projects. And again, the institution provides support, funding, and mentorship are highlighted.
And support for sharing the work.
Yes, financial help for students to attend meetings, local, national, international. And they also support international electives, which often have a research angle.
Right, so it seems the successful strategies here involve making research accessible, maybe integrating it into the course, definitely providing mentorship, and critically, putting up the money to remove barriers to participation and dissemination.
Yeah, that financial support seems key across all three for this domain. It enables the engagement.
Exactly. It's an investment that pays off in terms of student development and maybe even advancing the field. Okay, on to our final domain, number 4.
Right. This one covers engagement in supporting the community, extracurriculars, and service delivery. So looking outwards and also student life beyond pure academics.
Yes, developing that sense of social responsibility and allowing students to pursue other interests. Let's look at the UK schools MedSoc first. Sounds like a big deal there.
It really does. It's like an umbrella for over 50 student-run societies.
50? Wow, what sort of things?
Everything. Medical specialties, sports, well-being groups, specific interests like women in medicine.
Yeah.
A huge range. They even have a fair at the start of the year to show it all off. That's a great way to get students plugged in right away. Do they do community outreach too?
Yeah, quite a bit. Various student-led volunteer projects supporting local groups, homeless people, young people, kids in hospital, refugees. Real community connection. And their electives offer choice too, local, national, international, clinical, or health focus. Lots of options.
So providing structure for student initiatives, plus integrating community work into the curriculum through electives. What about School 2 in South Central Asia? Community and extracurriculars there.
They have specific community medicine courses built into the main curriculum. Students actually go out and do community-based health promotion projects.
So it's required for everyone, not just an option.
Seems like it's part of the core training.
Right.
Then their student council and other clubs run extracurriculars too, things like teaching kids in primary schools, social activities in nursing homes, and they really support electives, especially international ones and exchange programs. Lots of funding mentioned for that.
Again, that mix of required community exposure and supported voluntary opportunities, especially those broader international experiences. And School 3, the Middle Eastern institution.
Strong focus there on students getting involved in healthcare delivery, both locally and internationally, through volunteering and electives. And interestingly, their extracurriculars are often very much student-generated. Students really take the lead on community health campaigns and promotion.
Real student ownership then. So it seems like a pattern here is providing choice, lots of different options, both inside and outside the curriculum, and then backing it up with resources, staff support, funding.
Exactly. And often it's about the institution facilitating things, creating the space and providing the means, but letting the students drive a lot of the activity, especially in the extracurricular and community spheres.
Right. Okay, so we've looked at these 4 domains individually, but you mentioned earlier that underpinning all of this is the institutional culture.
Absolutely. You can have all the committees and programs you want, but if the underlying culture isn't genuinely supportive of student partnership, it probably won't stick or won't be as effective.
Makes sense. Needs to be more than just lip service. How did these schools show that cultural commitment?
Well, School 1, the UK one, they explicitly link their formal value statements about engagement to how they implement their programs. So the values aren't just posters on the wall. They're meant to guide practice.
Okay, connecting values to action.
And School 2 in South Central Asia, they have that specific strategic initiative focused on student engagement, developed in partnership with their student council. That signals a very intentional, high-level commitment to working with students on policy.
A genuine partnership approach.
It seems so, and I remember reading about another Aspire winner, not one of our main 3 today, but relevant. They actually created a specific role, a deputy dean for student engagement.
Wow. A dedicated dean-level position. That's a very visible commitment.
It really is. It formalizes the importance of engagement right at the top. So ultimately, it boils down to these formal commitments, policies, procedures that actively encourage and support students getting involved in everything. The institution provides the means, the avenues.
And the students then need to step up and participate individually and through their organizations.
Exactly. And crucially, as the sources stressed, everyone needs to understand why it's beneficial. Communicating the value of engagement to students, faculty, admin, that's key to making it all work.
It has to be seen as a win-win.
Precisely. Excellence here really needs that holistic view, the institution actively building the right environment, not just focusing on what students do or don't do.
So wrapping this up, it's clear student engagement is, well, it's much more than just attendance or basic participation.
Yeah.
It's this really complex, dynamic thing that requires a very deliberate approach from the institution itself.
Definitely. It's about building structures, fostering culture, providing resources. The examples from these Aspire schools show really practical ways institutions can build that partnership with students across all parts of academic life.
They really do illustrate how you move beyond just talking about engagement to actually operationalizing it effectively.
Yeah, creating that environment where students feel empowered, valued, and genuinely able to contribute and collaborate. It benefits them and it benefits the institution.
Absolutely. So on that note, here's something for you, our listeners, to think about. Reflecting on these examples we've discussed, where's one specific area, maybe in an educational setting, or even a different kind of organization, we're really focusing on enhancing stakeholder engagement, like this student engagement, could make the biggest positive difference? And think about those reciprocal benefits. What would each side gain from that deeper involvement? Definitely some food for thought there. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.